In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, May 17th, here in Korea. The Seoul High Court rejects a request by the medical arena aimed at blocking the government's plan to expand medical school admissions quota by 2,000 more seats from the current cap of 3,058. Meanwhile, the number of people employed stands at 28.69 million in April, up 261,000 on year, while the rate of employment for those aged 15 and above hits 63%, the highest for the month. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin pledged to strengthen their strategic ties during a summit in Beijing on Thursday, during which they also denounced what they called aggressive U.S. behavior. For the first time in almost 30 years, efforts to expand Korea's medical school enrollment quota are gaining substantial ground. This outlook comes in light of the Seoul High Court's ruling in favor of the government's plan for expansion late Thursday afternoon. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
The Seoul High Court on Thursday rejected an application submitted by medical students, exam candidates, professors and trainee doctors to halt the government's plan to expand the number of new medical students by 2,000 starting in 2025. The South Korean government stated on Friday that it respects the court's decision and will complete healthcare reform successfully.
The government deeply appreciates the court's wise judgment. The government will engage more actively in dialogue with the medical community and focus all our efforts on strengthening the emergency medical system to minimize the impact on patients.
The court ruled that medical school professors, trainee doctors, and exam candidates are not parties involved in the lawsuit and dismissed their claims. Regarding medical students, while they are considered as a party, the court rejected their claims due to concerns of the significant implications on public welfare. Regardless of the government winning the second trial, trainee doctors announced on Thursday that they would not return to their post, and the medical community will also appeal to set up a third trial. However, it seems that this won't take place until at least mid-June, while the official admission guides for each university will be finalized by this month. During the prolonged dispute, the medical community has filed over 20 lawsuits to the court, but all applications were rejected in the first instance. The medical community argues that the meeting to discuss the quota was too brief, lasting just an hour, and was nothing more than a formal act to confirm the number brought by the government. On April 30th, the Seoul High Court requested specific evidence from the government regarding the increase of 2,000 to the med school quota within the appeal filed by the medical community. Last week, the government submitted approximately 50 items of documented evidence, including research reports and meeting records. This court's decision on Thursday is pivotal, as now the government can enter the final stages of its medical reform plan. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
Korea's inflation appears to be slowing and its domestic demand growing. Now, this is the gist of the latest government report on the local economy. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korea's economy sees some positive signs as domestic demand grows and inflation slows. That's according to the latest Economic Green Book, a monthly economic assessment report released by the Finance Ministry on Friday. The ministry's description of the country's economy in this month's report included signs of recovery in domestic demand. Compared to the previous reports, pace of economic recovery differs across sectors. And this is mainly due to the rise in spending and construction investment.
The two parts to domestic demand are spending and investment. While the economy continues on its recovery momentum overall, the recovery in domestic demand is gaining traction.
In March, retail sales, an indicator of consumer spending, rose 1.6% compared to the previous month, with non-durable goods and durable goods both going up. Construction investment in the first quarter this year also rose 2.7% compared to the previous quarter, according to preliminary data from the Bank of Korea. This comes as inflation shows signs of cooling, with the Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, falling below 3% in April after consumer prices saw on-year increases of 3.1% in February and March. While prices of agriculture goods, livestock, and fishery products were up 10.6% compared to the previous year, the increase was at a slower pace compared to the month before, when prices rose nearly 12% on year. And core inflation, which represents a long-term trend in the level of prices by excluding volatile food and energy prices, was also up 2.3% on year compared to 2.4% in March. Exports in April were also up 13.8% compared to the previous year, driven by an increase in demand overseas for IT products such as semiconductors as well as automobiles. April saw a rise in exports for the 7th straight month. But overall industrial production in March fell 2.1% compared to the previous month, as production in mining and manufacturing, construction, and services all fell. And in the same month, investment in equipment dropped 6.6% on month. The ministry vowed to focus its policies on continuing the downward trend in consumer prices while also implementing measures aimed at improving people's livelihoods and managing potential risks. 이수진, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the labor front, employment expanded in April, rebounding to well over 200,000 after retreating to the 100,000 range back in March. Our Moon Hae-ryun covers the rebound and more.
South Korea's job market showed recovery on the back of rising exports in April. According to Statistics Korea on Friday, there were 28.69 million people in employment last month, a rise of some 261,000 compared to the same month last year. The rate of employment for people aged 15 years old and above rose by 0.3% on year to 63%, which is the highest figure for any month of April since data was first compiled in 1982. The job market has seen fluctuations over the past few months, posting over 300,000 more people in employment on year in January and February, before a smaller increase of 173,000 in March. The agency attributed this to a rise in employment in manufacturing as exports have been booming due to an upturn in the semiconductor industry. The manufacturing sector hired 100,000 more people in April on year, and this is the biggest increase seen since November 2022. Other sectors that also saw an upswing in employment were the healthcare and telecommunications industries. On the other hand, the retail sector has been seeing a decline in employment for some time now, and a spokesperson from Statistics Korea explained why.
Wholesale and retail industries are becoming automated, and with the boom in online transactions, employment in wholesale and retail has been continuously decreasing.
With South Korea's aging population, employment among those aged over 60 years old has continued to increase. 292,000 more people aged 60 and over were in employment in April this year compared to the same month last year. For those in their late 20s, the employment rate rose on year as it has been doing for the past 3 years to reach an all-time high for any month of April at 72.7%. During a meeting headed by the first Vice Minister of the Ministry of Economy and Finance on the same day to discuss the latest figures, the government pledged to support the creation of high-quality jobs in the private sector and develop job support initiatives for vulnerable groups. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average hit above the 40,000 mark for the first time during trade on Thursday, and analysts are making note of the rapid growth in stock market activity in recent years. Our Lee Sing-jae reports.
Amid optimism over a possible rate cut in the near future due to positive inflation data released earlier in the week, the U.S. stock market responded well to start Thursday's trading session. Despite the trading day ending with losses throughout the major indexes, the Dow Jones Industrial Average reached the 40,000 mark for the first time ever during intraday trading. The Dow Jones ended the trading day at 39,869, down 0.1% from the previous trading day. The Dow surpassed the 10,000 mark for the first time in March 1993 and the 20,000 mark in January 2017. While it took 24 years to double its figure during that time, it only took 7 years to rise from the 20,000 level to the 40,000 level and less than 3.5 years to go from 30,000 to 40,000. The Wall Street Journal on Thursday evaluated the recent milestone, saying that when the U.S. Fed began raising interest rates about 2 years ago to cool down the overheating economy, the Dow Jones surpassing the 40,000 mark seemed like it would be difficult to achieve. However, it said companies increased jobs, people continued to spend, and inflation cooled. More than anything, the economic recession predicted by many economists did not come to fruition, giving investors hope that stock prices would continue to rise. It added that the rapid rise of large tech stocks due to the development of artificial intelligence was also a factor in revitalizing the market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is one of the 3 major indexes in the U.S. stock market, consisting of 30 blue-chip stocks representing major U.S. industries. The weighted average of stocks is calculated based on stock prices rather than market capitalization. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
As reported during our newscast back on Thursday, President Yoon Suk-yeol and his Cambodian counterpart Manet have agreed to further advance their country's relationship to one of strategic partnership. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers their related remarks.
South Korea and Cambodia are now officially strategic partners, paving the way to strengthen economic and security cooperation. The announcement came following a summit between the two countries' leaders as President Yoon Suk-yeol on Thursday hosted Cambodian Prime Minister Manet at his office.
지금 현재 아세안 지역에서 가장 빠르게 성장하고 있는 국가인 캄보디아와 교역, 투자 협력을 확대하고 디지털 환경과 같은 미래지향적 분야에서의 협력 강화도 기대하고 있습니다.
Prime Minister Manet agreed about the bright future, saying his visit to Seoul will lay the foundations for success while also showing appreciation for the aid given by South Korea so far.
Mr. President, Cambodia's socio-economic achievements we are witnessing today are inseparable from the Republic of Korea's invaluable contributions across various sectors, including economy, infrastructure, health, education, and rural developments.
The two leaders also adopted a joint statement detailing the enhanced cooperation leading to the signing of 6 MOUs. Some key aspects in security include enhancing naval exchanges, with South Korea planning to make its first port call in Cambodia this year, and tackling transnational crimes together, including drug trafficking, people smuggling, cybercrime, and scam operations. For economic cooperation, the two nations are looking to set up a special economic zone.
They have proposed a plan to establish a special economic zone exclusively for Korean companies. The Prime Minister said, "Let's develop a plan that will allow Korean auto companies to freely conduct their business activities through this special economic zone."
In terms of the official development assistance, the two agreed to expand the Economic Development Cooperation Fund for the years 2022 through 2030 to $3 billion, twice more than what was previously agreed. The enhanced cooperation comes with it being 27 years since the re-establishment of diplomatic ties and with accumulated exchanges accelerating. In fact, the Korea-Cambodia FTA has surpassed $10 billion of trade, and it only came into effect in November 2022. In the meantime, at the luncheon was First Lady Kim Gun-hee resuming official engagements after leaving the public scene last December following news of her accepting a luxury bag as a gift. First Lady Kim has a special connection with a young Cambodian she met during the president's ASEAN summit trip in 2022. Aog Rotha, a then 14-year-old, was invited to Seoul by the First Lady to receive the heart surgery he required as he wasn't able to receive proper care due to his family's economic situation. Prime Minister Manet personally thanked the president and his wife and said this was one of the most important examples of the bilateral exchanges. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Top economic officials representing Seoul and Beijing have touched upon supply chain collaboration. The talks took place under the 18th Korea-China Economic Ministers meeting held virtually between Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok and his Chinese counterpart Shang Shanzi on Thursday, marking the resumption of such dialogue in almost 2 years. The two officials agreed to stabilize supply chains in emerging industries where their two countries are interdependent. Minister Che has also been invited to China for further talks to jumpstart related efforts. And during their latest summit in Beijing on Thursday, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin denounced what they described as U.S. military intimidation of North Korea. Our Shin Se-byuk has details.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin have expressed their opposition to military intimidation by the United States and its allies towards North Korea. The statement came after their summit meeting in Beijing, where the two leaders signed a joint statement on Thursday. Putin's visit to Beijing marks his first foreign trip since beginning his fifth term last week and highlights the growing importance of China-Russia relations. This is the fourth meeting between the two leaders since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. In the joint statement, Xi and Putin condemned the military threats and confrontations by the U.S. and its allies, which they said heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula. They urged the U.S. to de-escalate military tensions and abandon the use of sanctions. The two leaders also agreed to deepen military trust and cooperation, expand joint exercises, and regularly conduct combined sea and air patrols to strengthen military collaboration. Later that day, the two heads of state held a restrictive meeting for an in-depth discussion on strategic issues of common concern, particularly regarding the ongoing war in Ukraine. President Xi emphasized the need for a new security framework in relation to the Ukraine war and reiterated Beijing's commitment to a political settlement of the crisis. He also expressed support for an international peace conference at an appropriate time. Regarding the recent Putin-Xi summit, the U.S. criticized China's stance, saying Beijing, quote, cannot have its cake and eat it too when it comes to its relationship with Russia.
You can't want to have good, further, stronger, deepened relationships with Europe and other countries while simultaneously continuing to fuel the biggest threat to European security in a long time.
The White House also brushed off Moscow and Beijing's reaffirmation of ties. In a briefing on Thursday, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said that the Biden administration doesn't see anything new in the joint statement. The summit between the Chinese and Russian leaders comes as Moscow has become more dependent on Beijing. With China refusing to condemn the war in Ukraine and with increasing sanctions from the United States and its allies on Russia, deepening cooperation between the two historic powerhouses means relations with the U.S. are likely to become even more tense. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, starting today, that is May 17th, the phrase national heritage will legally replace the phrase cultural property. Under the new National Heritage Framework Act, the term national heritage will broadly cover all aspects of Korea that are considered invaluable heritage. National heritage will also be classified into 3 categories, including cultural heritage, natural heritage, and intangible heritage. The governing agency's name has also been rechristened to the Korea Heritage Service from the Cultural Heritage Administration. The Tuksam Hangang Park is hosting a beautiful collection of gardens to kick off this year's Seoul International Garden Show, which includes a special greenhouse in memory of South Korean abductees across the border in North Korea. Our Kim Jong-shil was there.
This year's Seoul International Garden Show opened on Thursday, where visitors can enjoy beautiful flowers and greenery along the Hangang River. 하나, 둘, 셋. On the corner of the extensive garden this year, there's a very special greenhouse dedicated to abductees who are being held in North Korea. The Garden of Three Forget-Me-Not Blossoms was designed and created by artist Hangang to remember those who still haven't come home.
The Unification Ministry hopes opening up this glass greenhouse garden filled with these forget-me-not sculptures dedicated to South Korean abductees taken to the north will help raise awareness to remember them.
The Ministry of Unification acknowledges over 160,000 people were taken to the north and didn't make it home. They were taken during and after the Korean War in the form of abductees, detainees, and prisoners of war who were not repatriated. The three forget-me-nots each represent those groups.
We organised this garden to publicise the issue of abductees in the country. Together with the families of the victims, we want to bring this issue to the attention of the South Korean people as well as the international community so that everyone can know about this and call for the immediate return of the abductees from North Korea.
The families of the abductees also gathered at the garden. They include Mr. Choi, whose father was working on a fishing boat when he was taken to the north in 1967.
We are thankful that the government is taking great care in the issue of abductees and that many endeavors are being made to raise international awareness. We don't ask North Korea for much. We just want to know if our family members are still alive or not.
The garden with the forget-me-nots will be displayed until October as a reminder of those still separated and to urge continued efforts for their safe return. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. The 33rd Arab Summit kicked off on Thursday in Bahrain's capital, Manama. The 22-member bloc issued a declaration calling for the presence of international protection and peacekeeping forces of the United Nations in the occupied Palestinian territories until the implementation of a two-state solution. The statement called for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip while blaming Israel's obstruction for failed negotiations. It also condemned Israel's aggression against the Palestinian city of Rafah, saying that it ignored international warnings of the disastrous humanitarian consequences. The declaration also called for all Palestinian factions to join the umbrella of the Palestine Liberation Organization, the political rivals of the Hamas. The summit was chaired by Bahrain's king, Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, while delegates from the Arab world, including Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, as well as the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, took part in the conference. Guterres said that any assault on Rafah is unacceptable and that the two-state solution is the only permanent way for peace. In the Gaza Strip, the United States military has completed the installation of an anchored floating pier to boost the delivery of aid into the region. On Thursday morning, Vice Admiral Brad Cooper of U.S. Central Command said that the pier was successfully affixed and in the coming days will commence the delivery of aid. For more than a week, no food supplies have entered the two main border crossings in southern Gaza. U.S. President Joe Biden had announced the plan for the pier in March, while the UN stressed that land delivery of aid was the most viable, effective and efficient method. A 90-year-old female sprinter from Italy claimed another world record in her age group by running 200 meters outdoors in 51.47 seconds. Emma Maria Mazenga, who was born in 1933, holds 5 world records, 9 European records, and 28 Best Italian performances across masters sprinting categories. She beat the previous record of 53.35 seconds held by Japan's Emiko Saito earlier this month. Mazenga said she likes to have a beer with her fellow runners, although not many are left in her age group. She lightheartedly said, "If I've no competitors, I know that I'll win from the start, so I aim to do a good time." She also said the sport prevented loneliness and had helped her through some difficult times. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. If you liked yesterday's refreshing conditions, you will enjoy today's. Today looks to be a repeat of yesterday's with a rise in temperatures. So the temperature roller coaster continues with big gaps between lows and highs. The entire country should notice a jump in highs today under lots of sunshine. But Gyeongsangdo provinces and nearby areas are having summer-like warmth this afternoon. Seoul sees highs going nearly 5 degrees higher this afternoon. And Gwangju gets up to 25 degrees, Busan topping out at 24 degrees Celsius. Strong UV rays will shine down on you. Have your sunglasses and a hat ready to protect yourself from bright sunlight. But the air quality will be normal to good nationwide all day today. The weekend looks to be a promising one, with Sunday even more summer-like warmth with an expected high of 28 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Then gorgeous sunny weather takes us through next week, and mornings will get warmer as well. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and that ends our Friday afternoon newscast. Coming up next is our daily panel session, and today we talk about movies and more.